themselves. Republicans have said that this bill is designed to provide a political advantage. But as former Republican commissioner of the Federal Election Commissioner, that chair under George Bush, Trevor Potter, has said in explaining his support for this bill, and he appeared as a witness in my hearing for this bill, he said, this bill does not give power to any particular party over another. It gives power back to the voters. And giving power back to the voters is exactly what we need. There is an amplified attack on the right to vote this year, but we've seen serious efforts to restrict voting rights since the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act 8 years ago. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 that marked the cornerstone achievement for the civil rights movement and became the law because of the tireless work of people like John Lewis, who put their lives on the line to secure voting rights. 56 years later, we are still fighting that battle. At the same time, we haven't had meaningful campaign finance or ethics reform. Our democracy desperately needs the proposals in this bill. And guess what? The American people agree. Yeah, this bill is bipartisan, except right here in this place. It's bipartisan because one poll released recently found that 78% of Americans, including 63% of Republicans, support making early in-person voting available for at least 2 weeks before Election Day. That's a proposal in our original For the People. It is in the manager's amendment that we're voting on cloture on, and it is in Senator Manchin's proposal. Another poll found that 83% of likely voters support public disclosure of contributions to groups involved in elections. Also, the Disclose Act in all three proposals. And yet some of my Republican colleagues want to limit disclosures. By the way, disclosures were championed by Justice Scalia. And yet, what happened in our committee hearing on this, our markup? Republicans filed amendment after amendment to gut those provisions of the bill. So while they may claim, my friends on the other side of the aisle, that this isn't popular, it is just not true. They claim it's not bipartisan. It is just not true. The bill contains 9 bipartisan bills, including the Honest Ads Act, which I first introduced with Senator John McCain and Senator Warner. And now Senator Lindsey Graham took up that cause. That provision would finally hold the social media companies accountable to make sure that there are disclaimer and disclosures on political ads. The work that I've done with Senator Langford, with you, Madam President, when you were in the Senate, to make sure we have backup paper ballots. We still have 8 states that don't have backup paper ballots. That provision is in this bill. Many of the bill's provisions have already been adopted in red, blue, and purple states and have the support of governors and election officials from both parties. 21 states have same-day voter registration, including red states like Idaho, Wyoming, and Iowa. That's great, but our question should be, why don't all 50 states have it, especially when the Constitution of the United States specifically says that Congress can make and alter rules for federal elections. It is as clear as the words on the page. 20 states have automatic voter registration laws, including Alaska, Georgia, and West Virginia. 45 states allowed all voters to vote by mail in the 2020 election, and 44 states have early voting. What this bill does is to take the best of the best and puts in place minimum standards so that no matter what state you call home, you have access to the ballot box. That is why Senator Merkley has worked so hard on this legislation. That is why Senator Schumer made this bill Senate File Number 1. The bill that we are voting to advance includes changes that directly respond to concerns about implementation from both Democratic and Republican state and local officials. We heard those concerns, and the Democrats on the Rules Committee, which included Senator Warner and Senator King, we worked on that manager's amendment and made it easier for rural areas, extended the time systems, and got at their concerns. And then Senator Manchin has come up with more ideas and more things that we can do to make the bill strong. We heard from election officials that requiring states to accept mail-in ballots for too long after Election Day would delay them from certifying the results. so we shortened the window. I could go on and on and on. In good faith, we have worked to make this bill work for America, and now it is time to allow for debate on this bill. Our Republican friends on the other side of the aisle, they say this was one thing that Senator McConnell would say in the hearing, that it would cause chaos. I'd say this: chaos is a 5-hour wait to vote. Senior citizens standing in the hot sun for 5 hours, for 10 hours, that is chaos. Chaos is purging eligible voters from voter rolls and modern-day poll taxes and one ballot box for a county of 5 million people, which is exactly what they did in Harris County, Texas. That is exactly what is happening in that state right now. Chaos is voters in Wisconsin waiting in line to vote for hours in the rain in their homemade masks and plastic garbage bags. The angry mob on January 6th that came into this very chamber, that spray painted the columns, that attacked police officers, that injured people left and right, that is chaos. As I said from the stage on Inauguration Day, under that bright blue sky where you could still see the spray paint at the bottom of those columns and the makeshift windows we had in place, I said this: this is the day our democracy picks itself up, brushes off the dust, and does what America always does, goes forward as a nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, we cannot do that if Americans are disenfranchised, if they are not part of our democracy. Republicans have sadly made it clear that this is not legislation they are willing to negotiate or even debate. They won't even give it a week. They won't even give it a few days. Just last week, they held a press conference to tell the American people that they don't believe Congress should act to protect the right to vote or get rid of secret money in our elections. So, honestly, I would love to get some support from the other side of the aisle, but we have to be honest. I don't expect we're going to get it. So my Republican colleagues, this is not the end of the line for this bill. This is not the end of the line. This is only the beginning. Because if you have your way, those voters won't just be at the end of the line. They're not going to be able to vote. In the Rules Committee, we will be holding a series of hearings, not just one hearing, a series of hearings, and we are taking it on the road for the first time in a long time. We are going to Georgia and holding a field hearing there so we can hear firsthand from people in the state on what is happening and why we must carry out the constitutional duty in this chamber to act. And I urge my Republican colleagues to recognize the work being done in states to restrict the freedom of Americans to exercise their sacred right to vote. Our nation was founded on the ideals of democracy, and we've seen for ourselves in this building how we can never take it for granted. We can't let state legislators get to pick and choose who votes and what votes get counted. That's not how a democracy works. I urge all of my colleagues to do what the American people are asking us to do, and to do what is right. Vote today to bring us closer to passing legislation to strengthen our democracy. We can't wait in line, and we can't make the people of America wait in line. The time to do this is now. Thank you, Madam President.